The Oklahoma City Thunder drop a game to the Golden State Warriors.
Maryland basketball pulls off a huge win against Wisconsin.
Chiefs versus Birds coming at you again.
The Raiders have a new GM and new head coach, but some familiar faces will make their way back to the Silver and Black.
Day 2 of the 2025 Reese Senior Bowl practices.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The New York Knicks beat the Denver Nuggets 122-112.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
This is not only the best the Knicks have played in any 3 games this season, it is one of the best 3-game stretches. In fact, offensively, it is the best 3-game stretch in franchise history. Jalen Brunson, masterclass, 30 points, 15 assists. I don't even know if the stats totally do it justice. We'll get into that. And the defense just keeps on getting better, fresh off shutting down the Grizzlies. They shut down Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. Alex Wolf, a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, certainly another feel-good win for the Knicks here. I mean, I think the biggest thing to me was the resilience in this one. Is kind of the first time in their last 3 games that they've encountered real resistance, I think, where, when they beat the Kings, they kind of just went basically wire to wire on them. When they beat the Grizzlies, I believe they literally went wire to wire on them and just had them completely at arm's length the entire game. This one, they got punched in the mouth in the third quarter. And, they were really helped out by the fact that Karl Anthony Towns managed to get Nikola Jokic in foul trouble in the first 2 minutes in this game. They were able to kind of run that score up a little bit in the first quarter into the second. And
can I just say real quick, Mike Malone, way too conservative. He sat him for 14 minutes with 2 fouls. I don't think I've ever seen Tibbs do something like that.
No, yeah, it did seem a bit much to me. I kept thinking okay, he should come back now. I mean, Jokic isn't a particularly foul prone player, and it's also not like they were lighting the world on fire without him out there. I mean, I guess they were doing slightly better than what you would typically expect because their on-off numbers without him on the court are just insane. I think it's a 25-point swing or something when he sits versus, with how much they go into the negative versus how much of a positive they are when he is out there. So yeah, it was a little surprising to see him sit for so long, but then third quarter comes around and, Jokic and Jamal Murray are playing well. And, they take, I think it was an 8-point lead over the Knicks about midway through the third. And you start thinking oh geez, this is looking a little dire at this point. Maybe the wheels are finally going to come off here. They're facing a good team, a desperate team, I believe. I think they had lost 2 straight games coming into this one.
First 3-game losing streak of the year, and they're trying to avoid it.
Yeah, which was sort of similar to what the Knicks ran into a couple weeks ago, except for they just kind of laid down. The Nuggets did not. I mean, they were definitely trying in this game, and yet the Knicks just kind of clawed back. They kept playing the aggressive passing lane defense that they have been playing recently, sticking with their man a little more, not doubling as much, and trusting their guys to, fulfill their defensive assignment and, get a stop and then, or at least force somebody into an uncomfortable situation where they could, make a pass that results in either a turnover or just not a well set up offense. I thought they did really well with that, getting out in transition more, the bench playing really well again, which was really helpful. I think that's been a large part of this, the fact that you can now rely on the bench for, in this game, they played a combined 46, 57, about 60, 61 combined minutes between all of them, which, allowed all the starters to just kind of play exactly as much as they were needed, but also get some breathers. So that way Josh Hart could come back in and, be a cannonball on offense and on defense. And, Mikal Bridges could stay in front of Jamal Murray and have a pretty decent second half on him for the most part, I think. And OG Anunoby, obviously was able to do everything that he did in this game, but also Jalen Brunson, who played 36 minutes, but was extremely efficient in all of them. I just thought it was a very well-rounded effort again, which is just kind of what's becoming the staple for this team. And, I think they owe as much to guys like Deuce McBride and Precious Achiuwa, who were able to come out there and hold down the fort. And like Deuce even, I think really showed some of the scoring chops that we've been waiting to see for like weeks and months now. Again, with like the creation and just the, the other day he's had some good games recently, but this was one of the first ones where like he kind of just had the ball in his hands and was playing as well as he was. But anyway, just all in all, really well-rounded effort. I'll let you decide where to take that next, but like it feels like one of those games where you almost have to shout out every single person the first time you talk about it, because it was just another really good complete team effort again.
Look, I've been coming on here and ranting and raving and saying that this team is all in, and we saw a version of them a year ago in January where they peaked as high as in a year where the Celtics were historically great. They had as dominant of a month of basketball as any team in the NBA had, right? And at that point, that's the standard. And then you set up however many first round picks they gave up, all the assets they gave up to put this version of the team together. Like, even though they lose Isaiah Hartenstein, it's out of their control. Like this team had to be at least that good, or at least show that ceiling. And we were getting it in January again. A year later, it came late in the month. They had us on our toes, right? Like, it was until the last second. But these last 3 games have looked like the Knicks of last year. And it's a little deja vu, because the game where they beat the Nuggets by, I think it was something like 42, 44 points. That was the one where I really started believing a year ago. It was like, all right, like if they could do this to the defending champs, they can do this to pretty much anyone. And same thing this year. Like the Grizzlies were one thing. The Nuggets, even though Memphis has been better this year, I think because of the presence of Jokic and his ability to just dominate a basketball game. And to your point, he tried in the second half. Like the whole team got red hot from 3. They were 8 for 12. Jamal Murray was cooking. Jokic was cooking. And the Knicks' ability to take that punch on the chin and say, all right, we're a well-oiled machine right now. We're going to punch you right back and win this game. And I said it in the little like post game now I did. Jalen Brunson's ability to be the best player on the floor on a court with the best player in the world. That's how you win a championship, right? Like you don't need the best player in the world. You need a guy who can act like the best player in the world for 2 games in a series, 3 games in a series, 4 games in a series. And the Knicks have that in Jalen Brunson. When you have that and you have a supporting cast that is this good, and Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby finally playing up to their potential, Josh Hart continuing to excel, Cat making big plays late, like the Knicks, I credit to our friends over at the Hot Hand Theory podcast, because they've been saying this for weeks. Like the Knicks don't need to make moves. They have enough in-house. Like they need a lot of things to fall their way, because they don't have that overwhelming depth they had a year ago, but they have enough. And we saw that tonight.
Yeah. And I mean, if this iteration of the bench continues to kind of grow and get better, you're still, no matter what, your big midseason acquisition, even if you don't make a deal at the trade deadline, which I think they have enough leeway to still make some sort of move, just something along the margins, the typical Leon Rose, Brock Aller special, of at least doing a little something. Yeah, even if it's just trying to get another second round pick back or something like that. But like they have that sort of flexibility. And yet, like, even if you don't make another addition, you've got Mitchell Robinson, who people are, starting to rave about, saying, hey, he looks lean. He looks like he's in good shape. Like, kind of right on the cusp of coming back. Like we've been hearing from Ian Begley of SNY, like he's hearing early February, and newsflash, early February is in 2 days. Like this team might be about to get a decent amount better, because he's the sort of guy that can offer something that just doesn't exist on this team right now, which is just like that level of dominant defensive presence on the defensive end. Like, it's just, I think that, they're kind of, to your point, peaking in a very similar way, where I had the exact same thought, and we didn't talk about this at all pre-show, but like I had the exact same thought after this win, where I was like, this feels a heck of a lot like last January. Like this is the same sort of feeling where it just seems like they're running into other really good teams right now, and the Knicks are the buzzsaw right now, and the other teams are the ones just getting cut down. Now, the real test might actually come, I think, in like a week against Houston, who's the other buzzsaw in the league right now. But they've got, I don't want to call it easy, because they still have LeBron James, Anthony Davis, whatever, but like, a not as hard game coming up next on Saturday.
And
then
Davis is out seemingly for that. So
well, there we go. Yeah. So that'll help as well. So hopefully a game to kind of catch their breath, because honestly, I think the real test where we're going to really see the mettle of this team is if they can stop the freaking juggernaut that Houston is suddenly becoming. But yeah, it's It's a fun time right now.
Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bet as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Live betting lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field. And the app is easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
The Oklahoma City Thunder drop a game to the Golden State Warriors.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast.
Brandon, we do have the Thunder losing to the Golden State Warriors to talk about. In this game, the Thunder should have won. That's plain and simple. The Warriors on the second night of a back-to-back. They did get Steph Curry back, but they didn't have Draymond. They did not have Kuminga. And the Thunder grew a 14-point lead. And in that third quarter, Golden State went on that run to wrestle away the lead. Eventually, this game saw 12 lead changes, 8 ties, and the Thunder fell short 116 to 109. And again, if the Thunder out-rebounded Golden State, they produced more turnovers, 15 to 11 than Golden State. But the big kicker is, despite having more points in the paint, more second chance points, and surprisingly, way less fast break points, the Thunder got trounced in the fast break point 18-5. It came down to shooting. Golden State made 49% of their shots against this historically great defense. They made just 34% of their threes and 82% of their free throws. But the Thunder made just 40% from the floor, a 9-point point differential, 23% of their threes, over 10 percentage differential, and then 80% of their free throws. And ultimately, that's the difference in this game. Clearly a frustrating loss. You can just see that from the amount of people who are cranky for staying up and watching this game. But the Thunder did go into these scoring lulls. They did have the common thread. Like, the Thunder have not lost a ton. They haven't even had 10 losses yet this season. They're still at the title favorite. They're still the title contender. They're still the West favorite. They're still the West number 1 overall seed comfortably. All that stuff remains true, while also, when you only get 10 losses, 9 losses, every single one of them we put under the microscope, because we just we haven't really seen this team come up short a ton to where that's whenever you naturally pick apart a roster. And as we know, Brandon, being in Oklahoma, this is a football state first and foremost. And even if this team had one loss and it was their first loss tonight, people would be thinking the sky was falling, because that's how you operate in the sport of football. So all that being said, what's your initial takeaway from watching this game and seeing the Thunder lose?
My initial takeaway is the shooting. Like, I hate to just say shooting variance and chalk it up to that, but the most telling stat to me from tonight is that outside of SGA, J-Dub, and Isaiah Joe, the Thunder went 0-17 from 3. 0-17 from 3 outside of those 3 guys. And those 3 guys scored 52 points, 26 points, and 17 points. That was the entire Thunder offense tonight, was Shea, Dub, and Isaiah Joe. And we know that the Thunder role players all season long have performed well. Isaiah Hartenstein, only 4 points tonight and 2 of 10 shooting. Like that, to me, that's such an outlier performance. Lou Dort, who's been one of the best 3-point shooters on this team this season, 0-4 from 3, 2 of 8 from the field, 4 points. Cason Wallace, 0-3 from 3, 1 of 5 from the field, 2 points. You can go down the list. Jay Will was 0-4 for 2 points. Kenrich Williams, he only shot 1 time, so, but he was 0-for-1. And then Aaron Wiggins, again, he's been a great 3-point shooter the last, couple of seasons. He's in a little bit of a slump right now. He went 0-for-4 tonight from 3 for 2 points. So it really came down to that. And again, on the other side of that, we saw the Warriors hit tough shot after tough shot in that second half, like step backs, hands in their face, slow-mo doing that slow-mo turnaround fadeaway jumper. Is some of that defense, some of that's tough shot making. They got a vintage Andrew Wiggins versus the Thunder performance. That always hurts. But kind of bottom line, when Shea scores 52 points and Steph Curry scores 21 points, you would just think that this is a runaway win for the Thunder. And it just, outside of those three guys, nobody could hit a shot. And that's the story of the game.
Yeah, and that's the common thread in these losses, and that's why it feels so loud, is because to beat this Thunder team, you're going to have to concede Shea for as much as you try to shut him off. And in the second half, the Warriors did lean into zone defense. They led into loading up on Shea in the paint, blitzing him, being more physical with him, sending help more often, getting the ball out of his hands, denying him the ball, and daring anyone else to beat them. And the Thunder just do not have reliable guys who can beat you night in and night out without Shea. And so that's why you see their offense stagnate when Shea's off the floor. It's why you see their offense stagnate sometimes with Shea after he gets hot early on. He had 31 points at the half. I mean, this guy was incredible tonight, and the 52 points goes a long way in showing that. And he was still in this loss a +1 in his minutes on the floor, which includes the minutes in the second half, like coming back early in the fourth quarter to try to will this win for the Thunder, and they end up losing, but he was still a positive in the plus-minus category. So when you look at the common thread losses, when they lose, which is rare, it comes down to how did the rest of these guys perform shooting the basketball. And it's a dreadful Lou Dort game offensively. Like he just was not good. And it was really from the word go for a guy who's, cut down on some bad decision-making. He shot 4 shots inside the arc, and the more attempts you get inside the arc from Lou, the worse it is. And he just was not good tonight. And there's no other way to put it. And then Casey Wallace went 0 for 3 from 3. Isaiah Joe was spectacular, but Wiggins went 0 for 4, and Jay will went 0 for 4. And Caruso, of course, got hurt a minute into the game, so that took him out of the picture. He hasn't shot the ball well this season anyway. And then Kendricks goes 0 for 1. You just didn't have anyone make a shot besides Shea, and then Dub got going late, and even him for the majority of this game left some to be the desired offensively, especially in the non-Shea minutes. And then Isaiah Joe was we'll have to spend a whole segment on how good Isaiah Joe was today, but it's kind of a two-sided coin, because the Thunder are still a historically great team by every single metric, including the eye test. For as much as you might dislike the sloppy play and the bad result from Wednesday, the eye test still says they're a great team. They've lost 9 games as we head into February. 9 games. It's just that when they lose games, it looks a lot like this, to where you believe this is their reputation. You believe that this is who they are. When in reality, this is who they are when they lose, and they win a lot more than they lose. But the other side of that coin is the end goal for this team, when you're this good, is to have success in the postseason. And frankly, it'd be difficult for this Thunder team, for as talented as they are, to blow a 5-game lead in the standings, to where you've pretty much got the 1 seed on ice, to where the rest of this regular season doesn't mean a ton, because we just know what to expect from this team when it comes to taking care of business against inferior opponents who they're going to play in the back half of the schedule, play enough of them to protect that lead on the number 1 overall seed. So the flip side of that coin is, when it's about the playoffs, and that's what everybody's looking forward to in Oklahoma City, you can't trust anyone on this roster besides Shea to hit meaningful playoff shots. And you can hope that, hey, those guys came up short in their first go around. Like Jada was not good enough offensively his first go around in the playoffs. Kaysen, Wiggins, Joe, even they were not good enough in their first go around in the playoffs. But it was their first go around. Most guys aren't good in their first go around in the playoffs. So naturally, you would expect them to be better in their second opportunity in the postseason, which exactly can happen. Like, we could get to the postseason and watch this team have big game Lou every single night, and have Isaiah Joe do what he did tonight, and have Wiggins be more comfortable. But the issue that you're seeing people have about this team is in bigger regular season games, right, where these bigger games happen, and you see the Bucks NBA Cup game, which doesn't count toward that total, and you see the game like tonight on national television, The role players just do not look comfortable. They do not look willing to shoot. They do not look willing to, kind of extend themselves in their role when all else fails. And you can point to Andrew Wiggins in this game. You can point to PJ Washington against Dallas. You can point to all these role players you want to point to who are like, you throw your hands up and say, well, they just, they just really overperformed tonight. Well, how do you overperform? You overperform by shooting, but by taking chances, by putting yourself in position to make shots. And the overpassing and the lack of confidence, I guess you could say, from these role players is a bit alarming, to where it does open up the Pandora's box of like, well, what if you just go get a guy like Cam Johnson, who can hit big shots in the playoffs, to where I can't really push back on that notion. It's just a he said, she said type of thing right now. It's like a two-party system. You either think that this team has to go get Cam Johnson, or they're destined to flame out in the playoffs, or you think, hey, this is still a really young team, and this team can still grow, and they could surprise you with having seen the pictures in the playoffs a year ago and improving this year. I lean more into the latter camp, but it's really tough to push back on.
Maryland basketball pulls off a huge win against Wisconsin.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps.
Maryland basketball is on an absolute roll and gets another huge win at home this time against number 17th Wisconsin in a really cool atmosphere. Ahmed, let me know kind of your thoughts overall on the game.
Yeah, obviously back and forth contest. Maryland was really able to kind of take control, obviously, in the second half with that three-point shooting. At one point, they were shooting 70% from three, 33% from inside the arc. So between Selton Miguel, obviously Jacoby Gillespie, and Rodney Rice being able to provide that spark. Julian Reese kind of able to pick up some of that front court scoring as well. So obviously another balanced effort from that starting group. Derek Queen, a little bit of a struggle from a scoring perspective, but I believe he was the first one in double figures in terms of rebounds. Ended up finishing with this sixth double of the season. So all around, definitely an encouraging performance. First game with students back. He expected an improved atmosphere inside College Park, and it definitely did not disappoint. And like we said, Maryland gets that much needed win and gets back to 500 quad one games this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Maryland, to me, has hit their stride over the last really 4, 5, 6 games. We've gotten a lot of wins, and I think, to me, the biggest thing is we figured out how to win games late. I think in other games, and whether it be on the road or at home, we couldn't win games late, whether it was Washington losing by 6 points late in the game, Oregon came down to the wire, even Northwestern was a loss that just we couldn't figure out how to win late. And I saw a Terps team that was back and forth for most of the game against Wisconsin, the 17th ranked Badgers. And I think that was one of my biggest takeaways is watching the Terps being able to win late. I thought that was one of the biggest storylines to me, to be able to really separate and really not make it too much of a sweat at the end of the game. I mean, Wisconsin hit a couple of shots, but it wasn't too big of a deal. Maryland was able to really separate themselves towards the end of the games, and I've seen that on this win streak. Maryland be able to do that is just win games at the end, figure it out.
Yeah, and I actually, I agree with that. I think, the last couple minutes of that first half, I think it was 5-6 minutes left. Wisconsin was holding on to a 3-5 point lead. 6:52 left. Wisconsin was up 23-16, and Maryland was able to get hot a little bit, take advantage from the free throw line. But Derek Queen, Tafara Kapari was able to add in 3 as well. So I thought Maryland being able to kind of close that gap a little bit, and obviously going into halftime with that 1 point advantage, I thought was a huge swing. And potentially shaping up for the second half. Obviously, Wisconsin came out firing, but like we said, that 3-point shooting was kind of able to weather the storm and eventually really bring the crowd back into it.
Yeah, the atmosphere is definitely something that I want to touch on, because I think by far this game was the best atmosphere that we've seen so far for Maryland basketball. And that stuff matters. College basketball is a sport a lot of students like to go to, a lot of people watch, and the atmosphere and the home court advantage is really a thing. I really noticed that when we would play Illinois, when we played Indiana, our last 2 games before this Wisconsin game, they had a really live atmosphere, and it was cool to see Maryland having a really awesome atmosphere for this game. I thought that was one of the biggest storylines of this game, is just the atmosphere that Maryland played with in this game. It was, I guess they call it like a gold out, or I don't know the exact description. Yeah, the gold rush. So I thought that was a big storyline, seeing Maryland fans really come out and get excited about a good basketball team this year.
Yeah, and I think Maryland's. I think they. I don't think they introduced it, but I think it was there when I was in college. Back when we were still playing Duke. So I guess I'm showing my age a little bit, but obviously, I think Maryland, you always kind of get that kind of that weird period with Maryland, because winter break kind of goes so long and goes so late into January, where you kind of miss, maybe 2-3 conference games at home. Obviously, you had the Ohio State game in College Park, where fans were able to, or students were able to come for that. But like you said, being able to kind of really get the crowd into it, and kind of going into the game, was listening to the BTN crew kind of talk about this game, talk about how Wisconsin would have to battle the front court. Derek Queen would, have to have to make some adjustments on the defensive end as well. But Andy Katz kind of pointed to what the X factor would be in this game, and he pointed to that crowd, that atmosphere inside Xfinity Center, and it really felt like in that second half that Maryland kind of needed that point to kind of really get that crowd into it. When I think it was Selt Miguel was the one that hit that 3-pointer to go up 54-50, and kind of felt like that was starting to be the turning point. And really since then, it felt like the crowd, not that they weren't before, but they really, really got loud and kind of continued to will Maryland to a victory down the stretch. And I will say, Scott Van Pelt, I think, he talked about in his podcast, I think Maryland basketball, they posted on their Twitter account, this is kind of one of those games where the fans kind of will you to a win. And the fans really did not disappoint tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, of the fans not disappointing and really showing out. And I think something else that I want to hit on is the foul trouble was actually really interesting in this game. Wisconsin, 2 of their best guys got in foul trouble a little bit late in games of their point, or late in the first half, which I thought you touched on earlier, how Maryland was able to end the half well and cut the lead. But Maryland guys really were in foul trouble for different parts of the game. What really stood out to me was Rodney Rice getting his 4th foul. I don't think I really processed how many fouls he had when I was watching the game, and you could tell how frustrated he was when he picked up his 4th. And I was like, he seemed a little bit more mad than I thought he would be, just because I didn't realize he had his 4th foul. So I thought that was something that I was really happy about, was Maryland fighting through some of the foul troubles that they had. And then Miguel picked up a late 4th foul as well. I thought Maryland did a really good job of figuring it out while there was some foul trouble going on. And Rodney Rice has been one of our best players, one of our most consistent guys. And that was, I thought, a big part of this game, was figuring out how to win while kind of balancing the foul trouble.
Yeah, and Jacoby Gillespie at one point, he was on the bench with ice on his knee. I think it was that offensive foul call at the under 16 timeout, which was, I could believe it was a little bit of a questionable of a call, if you ask me, honestly. But Maryland kind of being able to will through it. And again, Derek Queen, we've kind of seen it through conference play, and it's kind of expected. It's understandable at times. I shouldn't say expected, but understandable for a freshman to kind of go through his lulls, especially first round in conference play. And again, Maryland's kind of had to figure out how to win without them. And again, this is a Wisconsin team that again, they especially in that first half, they were able to really, do well from 3, and that would kind of put a thorn in Maryland's side. So, this Wisconsin team also plays Maryland well historically inside Xfinity. So, again, I think Rodney Rice, like you mentioned, picking up a couple of those fouls. I think it was 3 fouls in the first 8 minutes of the second half. Selt Miguel picked up 2 coming out of that under 8 timeout. So, again, Maryland kind of being able to mitigate some of that down the stretch. You saw a lot of Jay Young. You saw a lot more Deshaun Harris-Smith, especially after not seeing the bench really these last couple of games. in Illinois against Indiana. Just seeing Jay Young, Deshaun Harris-Smith, who hit that big three to kind of jumpstart that run. I think it was Deshaun Harris-Smith, Miguel, then Bryce to kind of put Maryland ahead and really, like we said, get the crowd into it. But to get some of those contributions from the bench, I thought was a lift for Maryland.
Yeah, before we move on, I thought the bench was big because you saw, like you talked about, Deshaun Harris-Smith who hitting a huge three, Gapari hitting a huge three, and that's something that hasn't really been there a ton this year, and I'd probably argue is probably the weakness of this Maryland team is probably the bench. I think the starting five, like the Big Ten cast was talking about, really good starting five, amongst the best in the Big Ten. Maybe you could argue the best in the Big Ten, but the bench is definitely something that is definitely a question mark. So seeing Deshaun Harris-Smith, we know struggles with confidence sometimes with the shot, hit a huge shot. Credit to those guys off the bench, and credit to Kevin Willard for being able to get those guys going a little bit off the bench.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, the bench, in terms of bench production, I do think that is kind of a glaring, weakness, kind of a concern for Maryland right now. Something that you can definitely point to. But I'll make the argument that a Jay Young, when he's coming into the game, you're not asking a Jay Young type to really be a score first point guard. You're kind of looking at him to be a facilitator. And again, Willard talked about in preseason, that's kind of lived up into the season, into conference play. He's definitely an asset on the defensive end. And Deshaun Harris-Smith, obviously, his struggles, but again, hit a timely three like we talked about. He's able to kind of provide that strength on defense as well. And then Tafari Kapari, him and Jordan Geronimo, he talked about, he was asked about substitution methods and, what kind of goes into it, what's his thought process. And he says, that's a lot more of, matchup based, when you look at an Illinois type where it's, a lot more, just fast tempo, especially with the Illini big man out, you kind of need your guards and Tafari Kapari, that's kind of a better fit. And then Indiana, where it's a lot more bruiser, you have the big men from Indiana, where it's just you got to win the boards, got to win the paint. It's just a more of a Geronimo type fit. So I do think that Maryland kind of has some complementary pieces that kind of come off the bench. But again, I think that the little concern, I guess, why I don't view that as much of a concern for me is kind of what we talked about tonight. All 5 starters finishing in double figures. So they re-emphasizing what you said. Great win tonight.
Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bet as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Live betting lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is easy to navigate, plus knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
Chiefs versus Birds is coming at you again.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
I feel this is a very different Eagles team. There was a lot of hype, a lot of question, I felt, last time going into this ballgame. This seems simplified to me, and maybe I'm making it too well-rounded, but this is about Saquon Barkley, and Saquon Barkley, and Saquon Barkley. And then that's what this ballgame is about, as far as I can tell.
Saquon Barkley, and Saquon Barkley. I get it to an extent. I would say that the Eagles offense really hasn't changed a ton other than Barkley. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a problem. Yeah, they don't have Jason Kelce, but their center was very good this year. I think he made the Pro Bowl. Obviously won't be playing in the Pro Bowl, but he made the Pro Bowl. Dickerson made the Pro Bowl, the guard next to him. So they still have a good offensive line. But you shift it over and you look at the defensive side of the ball, I think that's where you really see the changes. And that is something that I think could give the Chiefs some trouble.
Yeah, I agree. And both those guys today would have been non-participants, according to the simulated kind of stuff, along with Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown. We did get the simulated report here. Even they were going to give rest to Dallas Goedert if he had to. Now, Cam Jurgens, and Landon Dickerson are the two guys that played center last week. And Cam Jurgens says he's going to go. Jason Kelsey's talked about it for the last year or so, about how they prepped all this stuff to be able to do the things that Jason did with Cam, knowing that Jason was getting a little bit older and making it more difficult. I don't see the same power and the same effectiveness in that tush-push style, brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it. I think, honestly, what we just saw last week has been a more effective unit in that quarterback sneak area in the Buffalo Bills. So the key for me is, if you don't even, let them in there very often, say they get one or two tries at that, how much more confident are you the Chiefs defense can stop that particular play this time than, say, maybe the last time they played, or certainly earlier this season?
I do think that it's something that they're going to have to practice for this week. And the problem that of practicing for that is then the reality is that play could injure people just because of how you're supposed to be trying to defend it and how you're supposed to be trying to attack it. And wanting to actually practice that, and the way that they're going to practice that will be interesting. I do feel better about it after watching what they were able to do to the Bills and stopping them on 4th down and 1. And yes, that was a stop on 4th down and 1. Can't see the ball across. And honestly, it's funny because I went back and I watched the play before that where everybody said it was a first down. You screwed yourself. Like they didn't challenge it. Like, if you think it's a first down, go challenge it.
Yeah.
They didn't challenge it, and they got up and they ran a play immediately trying to think that they were going to catch the Chiefs off guard, and the Chiefs stood there and took care of it. So to me, that tells me that they have worked on that kind of thing, specifically to prepare for Josh Allen in that scenario. Mm-hmm. So I think they'll be ready for what they're going to be dealing with Jalen Hurts. Whether they'll be successful or not, that's the big question.
Well, I think they will be successful because two factors, actually, because after watching last week, Jalen Hurts ain't going left. I'll tell you that. He is guaranteed not to go left. Now, normally he's going to tuck up, maybe slide a little bit right as he pushes through it. It all depends on the resistance you get, but it is much more of a straightforward thing, I felt, in the way that Philly has done this in the past. But knowing that that's there and knowing that they just stopped Josh, who I think has more momentum behind him and has more power overall, I think that probably makes him want to go away from it. But those two things, it's interesting that we're talking, first and foremost, in this whole initial look at them, is about how they move the ball on the ground. Now, the only people that know better about how good Saquon Barkley is are the people who decided to let him go. So, Giants, you get what you deserve. But in this game, you can throw the ball. They have some pass catchers, obviously, a little banged up. But I still feel like they can't do that as their first task. I still feel they have to have this run game as the thing that sets up their passing game. I don't feel it's straight drop back and they feel that they can attack.
That's going to be interesting because I do think that they have the ability to get after it with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith if they're healthy. They have 2 weeks to try to get them healthy, so that's going to be the big question. Can they get healthy enough to where they're going to be in a position where they can attack? If they can't, then you're in a situation where, you run first trying to set up the pass, but you still have those guys out there and they're still going to play. It's a Super Bowl at this point. Any player that has any opportunity to play, no matter what their injury is going to find a way to play. That's just the reality, especially if you're a star. You're going to find a way to be out there if you can. So I think that's a big deal. And we'll see. I'm going to be really curious to see how the Chiefs attack and try to slow down the Philly offense. Because if you go back 2 years and watch what happened the last time, they didn't have the running game that they have right now. They had a good passing attack. They didn't have the running game, and they still put up a ton of points on the Chiefs. That's a little bit concerning, knowing that they're going to be going into a situation where their running game is so much better and their passing offense hasn't taken a huge step back. It's taken a little bit of a step back, but it hasn't been a huge step back.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And remember, there were some crazy plays in that ballgame, to tell you the truth. Nick Bolton's come up with a remarkable play. Yeah, I mean that's how you do it. When you compare these two teams, the Eagles have been putting out more points per game, except the Chiefs just peaked for their season, put up the highest point total that they put up this season. So I don't know that I'm going to hold that against it. Point differential, they're second in the league at 16. I'm sorry, plus 160. You average that out. Chiefs are 11th, plus 59. the thing that seems to be coming back to is this team is what this team is. And we always talk in the preseason about how every team's a little bit different. This team does not mind winning close games. They've been able to do it. They have a 2-game advantage against the Eagles and them being able to pull it out when the scores are close.
The one thing I would argue with you, though, is when you look at the Eagles and you look at the Chiefs, you go back and we talked about this already this week, and we've talked about it several times leading up to this game. Kansas City wasn't trying to put anything on tape. Eagles are a completely different ballgame. They went out. They were trying to blow people out at times. They were doing whatever they could. And it was obvious in the game against the Commanders. They were trying to blow them out at that point. And that's fine if that's the way you want to play. I have no problem with it. And I wish Kansas City would do it from time to time. But the reality is it's hard to argue against the results that Andy Reid has been able to show to this point. Like, you're in a situation where okay, all I have to do is get back to the Super Bowl and we can run something that's going to just completely catch somebody off guard. Look at Corn Dog. Like, I understand they're not going to be able to do Corn Dog probably
It's
against
still
Philly
in the
this time
playbook,
around.
I guarantee you.
Well, I know
bet
it's in
you
the
we
playbook.
see it.
Maybe. I'd be surprised if Philly wasn't ready for it this time around. But they're going to have something else. Remember, the Super Bowl's when they bust stuff out. The Rose Bowl parade was in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Corn Dog was in the Super Bowl. They're going to have something. And, the thing that they did against the Buffalo Bills wasn't the Super Bowl, obviously, but it shows you things that they can do and shows you different ways that they can adapt and use going to the Super Bowl. And now the Eagles have to prepare for that type of setup. And I guarantee you, Andy still has 2 or 3 different variations of what they can do with the ball in that scenario.
Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bet as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Live betting lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field. And the app is easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
The Raiders have a new GM and new head coach, but some familiar faces will make their way back to the Silver and Black.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast.
So one of the questions that was asked to Pete Carroll in his press conference on Monday, introductory press conference, was what is the coaching staff going to look like? How are you going about putting the coaching staff together? What is it going to look like? What are some of the requirements that you have to be on the Pete Carroll coaching staff? And this is what he had to say about the coaching staff with him.
I'm really looking for people that have been with me, that understand the philosophy to some extent. I want guys that have never been around me before so that they have to learn what we're all about, and we can watch the process of them learning who we're all about and what we expect. And then I'm hoping that we can maintain some of the terrific coaches that are on the staff too, so we can have the benefit of the insights that they bring and the continuity that they can generate for us. So it's a combination of people that we're looking for, but it's all going to fall back into the same theme. We want ball people. We want guys that love the game. And I mean, that's obviously, if nothing else, we've hammered that home today, Johnny. So that's, we want to make sure that we do that. Also, it's important to find people that can help us grow, and challenge us. And those also, I know in my history, I need people to keep me on track. As you can tell, I get pretty juiced up and I'm going to get going. I need people to keep me balanced. That's why Glenn has been so important over the years to keep me rolling. But so it'll be a combination to get that done if we do it well, and it's out there for us, and we've got a lot of people that are really interested. So we got to do a great job of that.
So there was Pete Carroll talking about what he's looking for. He's looking for some guys that have worked with him in the past, some guys that aren't familiar with him, have not worked with him at all, and also he's looking for some guys that are on the current coaching staff of the Raiders, some very talented coaches. Why do I bring that up? Why do I talk about that? Well, on Wednesday, we found out about a couple coaches that will be returning to the Silver and Black, to Pete Carroll's coaching staff, and I believe it's a really good thing. Matter of fact, we'll start with the second guy that we found out about first because, well, I think he's probably the most important one. Josina Anderson, been covering the NFL for a very long time. NFL Insider tweeted out on Wednesday, well, probably about Wednesday evening around 5 o'clock Pacific time. No, it was about 4 o'clock Pacific time. She said, I'm told the Raiders and Patrick Graham are working on a deal to bring him back as defensive coordinator. So if they bring back Patrick Graham, which it looks like that they are in talks to bring him back as a defensive coordinator, maybe they give him the assistant head coach job. I don't know exactly what the title will be. We'll find out sooner rather than later. That'll be the first time since 2004 through 2008 that the Raiders defense will have the same defensive coordinator at the helm. The last time that happened, it was Rob Ryan. And not Rob Ryan, the guy that just went to USC, but the guy that was running the defense from 2004 to 2008. So it's been a very long time since the Raiders have had continuity at that position. So I'm excited about that. I think that that's a big deal. I know a lot of people at the end of the season were concerned about Patrick Graham because he did not sign the contract extension to stay with the Raiders. So a lot of people thought he was going to be gone. Of course, he went to Jacksonville. He interviewed for the head coaching job there. He also interviewed for the defensive coordinator position there. That obviously did not work out. He also interviewed in Cincinnati for the defensive coordinator position. Al Golden from Notre Dame, who used to be a defensive coordinator in the NFL, he ended up getting that job. So here you go. Patrick Graham looks like he's returning to the Silver and Black. And look, I think that that's great for continuity. I know that Patrick Graham and his defense has not been great as far as lights out or what my expectations were even going back to training camp in Costa Mesa when I felt like this very talented defense could have the chance to be a top 5 defense. And some people let me know about it on Twitter on Wednesday, and that's okay. I'm all right with that. I have no problem admitting that, hey, I was wrong about the expectations of the defense. But even with guys with all the injuries that they were dealing with, and I'm talking about some big-time players with injuries like a Malcolm Kuntz, like a Christian Wilkins, like a Max Crosby, like a Marcus Epps. Divine Diablo was out for a while. Jacorian Bennett, who was playing lights out, he ended up the season on IR. There was a lot of guys that were missing on that defensive side of the ball, and they still did a really good job. Was it perfect? No. Is there areas that it needs to improve? Absolutely. Right? I don't think there's any defense in the league that is. I mean, it's not going to be the number 1 defense in the league, number 2 defense. Hell, it might not even be a top 10 defense. But if they can get that continuity back, have a guy that's been there, done that, knows what those players are like on the defensive side of the ball and how to utilize them and get the most out of them, I think that that's nothing but a good thing. And also think about this. The Raiders have 29 free agents, and a lot of those guys are on the defensive side of the ball, and some pretty big names. Malcolm Kuntz, right, a guy that never even made it to 2024 because he tore his ACL. He was a guy that looked like he was going to be in line for a really big season. K'Lavon Chaisson, a guy that was picked up off waivers and thrived with the Raiders down the stretch. Robert Spillane, he's been great since the Raiders picked him up. He's been their best linebacker in a very long time. Adam Butler, he shined. Without Christian Wilkins in the lineup, he shined. Nate Hobbs, he's a guy that's been dealing with a lot of injuries throughout the course of his career, but when he's in there, he's a really good player. Trayvon Merrick ended up having another really good season, and I think actually probably his best season so far in the NFL, especially playing near the line of scrimmage. All those guys are free agents. I'm not saying that they're all going to come back, but with Patrick Graham back in the mix, he could say, hey, the non-negotiables. Remember, we talk about non-negotiables all the time, and we talk about guys that have to graduate. The non-negotiables could be, hey, I need a Malcolm Kuntz back. I need a K'Lavon Chaisson back. I need Robert Spillane. Robert Spillane is basically the quarterback of the defense. He's the guy that, as Patrick Graham has said, is the coach on the field. He's the guy. He's him on the field. So I could definitely see him pounding the table and saying, hey, I need Robert Spillane back. Adam Butler, I could see him coming back. Trayvon Merrick on the back end. Again, I mean, there's a case that could be made for all the guys I mentioned. Kuntz, Chaisson, Spillane, Butler, Hobbs, and Merrick. There's a case for all those guys. Again, I don't think that all of them are going to come back. I just don't think that that's realistic. That's a lot of retaining your own guys. But again, for a defense that was very promising and dealt with a lot of injuries, they still kept the Raiders in a lot of the games throughout the course of the year. And yeah, I know it's nothing to write home about when you're on a 10-game losing streak like the Raiders were at one point and only win 4 games. It's nothing to hang your hat on and say, man, they sure are really stinking good. But again, if you watch the games, not just look at the box score, the defense more times than not did a really good job. So I think that is a big plus that Patrick Graham is going to be returning to the Raiders as a defensive coordinator, and maybe a little bit more. Maybe he gets a assistant head coaching job. Maybe he's a succession plan to Pete Carroll. Who knows? I don't know the details of it, but again, that was a welcome sight to see when Josina Anderson tweeted out that Patrick Graham and the Raiders were in conversations to bring him back. Also, we found out from Tom Pelissero from NFL Network that the Raiders are retaining special teams coordinator Tom McMahon. So there you go. There's some more continuity along the staff for Pete Carroll. So you bring back Patrick Graham, defensive coordinator, which also, by the way, I didn't mention, probably means that you bring Robbie Leonard back, who is the defensive line coach. If you can get those two guys back, that's huge, right? There hasn't been any kind of confirmation or tweets or information or any NFL insiders putting any sources out saying that Robbie Leonard's coming back. He did interview for the defensive coordinator job on Monday, but like if Patrick Graham comes back, talking about non-negotiables, probably Robbie Leonard coming back as well is a non-negotiable. He's a guy that I actually spoke to on Monday when I saw him at the press conference. But they're also bringing back Tom McMahon as a special teams coordinator. And again, I think that that's a good thing as well. And the reason I feel that way is just because you have AJ Cole, you have Daniel Carlson, you have this battery of guys that all work together, and special teams is kind of a weird unit anyway. So you want to have as much continuity as possible. You don't want AJ Cole and Daniel Carlson to all of a sudden have to be learning a new style again, a new scheme again, or, different from a different coach. Let's put it like that. So I think Tom McMahon returning is a good thing. I mean, his special teams unit outside of maybe a game or two, of course, there was a time when AJ Cole got the punts blocked and he was upset after the game. Daniel Carlson missed a couple field goals, but for the most part, the special teams unit was pretty good, right? They do need a guy that can, threaten the other team as far as kick returns. I think they have a couple guys that qualify for that, but they've got to find a way to maximize that and finally really be a threat to take a couple to the house or whatever and flip the field a little bit, for the offensive side of things. They do need that game changer, and maybe they can find that guy. Maybe they think they have that guy, but it sounds like Tom McMahon, he is. Tom McMahon is returning as a special teams coordinator in 2025 under head coach Pete Carroll. So there's a little bit of continuity. There's going to be change. We know that, right? Pete Carroll's he's interviewing many different coaches to be on the coaching staff, and I guarantee he's not going to retain all the coaches that Antonio Pierce had on his staff. But Patrick Graham, check. Special teams coordinator Tom McMahon, check. Now, if they can get a check mark next to Robbie Leonard, that's a trifecta as far as I'm concerned.
Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bet as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Live betting lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field. And the app is easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59.
Day 2 of the 2025 Reese Senior Bowl practices.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Jackson Dart, quarterback from Ole Miss. He didn't this wasn't a wow performance today. But what he did do, Keith, is he ran the offense efficiently. He made throws. He was accurate. He got the ball out typically on time for the most part. He had a nice deep outcut throw to Ty Felton. He had a nice, I think it was like a slot curl to between two defenders to Jake Brenningstool, who I'll talk about in a little bit, the tight end out of Clemson. I think Jackson Dart, because, they threw the ball a little bit more today. We asked for that yesterday, Keith. Can you throw the ball a little bit more for the second practice?
They listen to it.
They listen. Shout out to the Brown staff, right? They listen a little bit. But Jackson Dart, he did well. And I think for him, it was like, hey, he didn't push the ball vertically down the field. Not a lot of guys are right now, and they're more so checking it down, hitting the first option. When they called it for him, Keith, he hit it. And I think that's the main thing you wanted to see. Just complete the passes, do what the play is designed, and he's good at doing that, right? Hopefully, and we'll talk about it later on, but, hopefully we see more vertical shots on the final day of practice. But, I think Jackson Dart helped himself today.
Yeah, DP, I agree with that. I'm going to go to another quarterback, too. I'm going to go Dylan Gabriel. Because I think this is his second day kind of being solid. And I think what he's carving out a role of the thing is that if you're evaluating quarterbacks, right, if you're looking for elite arm talent and one thing, right, but if there's the category of okay, can this guy get through his progressions and throw accurate passes? I think Dylan Gabriel is a quarterback that can potentially be for you and your team, right? If you're a timing and rhythm guy, you want an experienced guy, you want a guy that appears to be able to see the whole field, make good decisions ultimately with the football, then Dylan Gabriel, I think he's carving out a niche for him. I think that we were a little worried that he, it would be the same type of hype as the guy from BYU. I know you mentioned that a couple.
Oh, Jaron Hall.
Yeah, yep. And then seeing him in person, but Dylan looks to like that much experience, right, in college has helped him, right, and being in new environments and different situations has helped him. That I'll say, like day 1 and day 2, he's probably been the most steady quarterback, right, as far as exactly what you're getting, rep in and rep out. But I'm gonna go to the backfield too, DP, and staying with that first practice. I'm gonna go 1, Ollie Gordon, and then 2, Damian Martinez. I think that both of those guys, with the lack of production from this past year, not that they became afterthoughts, but people were associating the production with their, questioning their lack of talent. But I think here in this environment, and this is what we asked for, right? When we came, DP, when we did the Senior Bowl preview shows, we was like, hey, get you out of that environment, see what you're able to do. You look at Ollie Gordon, he looks every bit of 6'3", 230 pounds, right? Like, hey, that's a big back right there. Then you got Damian Martinez thumping in between the tackles, and you're saying, okay, this guy still has juice too, and he's willing to finish runs. It's funny because they almost look like the Pittsburgh Steelers backfield, right? It almost looks like the Najee Harris and Warren combination with those two guys with the national team. So that's two running backs I'll say that made themselves some money too.
Yeah, no, especially like when I was watching Damian Martinez, he had some solid runs today, just good footwork, patience, vision, getting into the hole, getting in and out of the lanes, and getting upfield. I like what I saw from him. Keeping it with the running backs. Devin Neal had a good day toting the rock in the second practice. Decisive, good vision, patience as well. Showcase a solid burst. There was one run where he had to negotiate a free runner in the backfield. He gave him a little dead leg. Got outside, beat the pursuit angle and everything like that. It just showcased that ability for him. Jalen Noel. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm going with DP. We have to throw this in there, right? I'm gonna say this. Who? Mike Green, right? We have to Mike Green making himself some money. Whenever you go viral, DP, it's a good thing, right? On the football field. Well, most times, it's a good thing. And that's exactly what Mike Green did. You're talking about lifting another 300-pound man, getting straight to the power, right? And I think that's going to bode really well for him. And I would expect him being a small school guy, right? Where's Marshall is not, is it the MAC? Is Marshall the MAC?
Marshall AAC maybe.
Yeah, one of the two, right? But you think about a comp that is probably going to start getting thrown around for this guy is going to be Khalil Mack, right? And him coming out of Buffalo.
They're in the Sun Belt.
They're in the Sun Belt. Okay. Khalil Mack will be a comp that's probably going to start getting thrown around, and seeing this guy in person, he has the build, DP. I was one of those guys that I questioned what was his actual frame, what was his actual power, what was his actual strength, right? His functional strength. Well, guess what? He said, Mr. Keith Sanchez, you question it, I'm gonna give you the answer, right? And he went straight through through the offensive tackle in that rep, and you have to say that was definitely a guy that made himself some money, right?
No, 100%. I think he showcased that he's not just a guy that has a great ghost move and the dip and bend around the edge, but he should listen, if you are not set, if your feet aren't underneath you, and if you expose your chest, I'm gonna run through you, and I'm gonna power through you.
You better get ready.
You better get ready, man. So I love what I saw from him, and I think honestly, Keith, let's be honest about it real quick. He's probably been the best edge out here. Like, you know what I mean? And this is a good edge group of guys and everything, man. So I think he's absolutely not just made himself some money. I think he stamped himself more than likely as a first-round pick. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's worked himself into that top 20. When you think about teams that need edge rushers, I'm looking at Carolina Panthers. Again, you won 2 of your last 3. Panthers fan didn't like when I said it. I said, hey, these wins are meaningless because now you're moved out of the Abdul Carter range where you were right in that spot for him potentially. Because, like I always say, on the third downs, I need a bucket getter. I think the Panthers would be a team at number 8 that, or maybe, I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets too, because Jermaine Johnson's coming up on the contract. He's coming off the injury. And even if he wasn't, you still need another edge rusher opposite of him anyway. Like I could still see him going top 10 to a team that absolutely needs to improve the edge rush group. Keith, I'm real quick, man. Jaden Higgins big wide receiver out of Iowa State. You talk
Yes,
about
sir.
bounce back performance.
Him and
He
Pat
was-
Bryant.
Like we talked about it, doing too much. When you're 6'3", Keith, it's a lot of stuff you can't do or you shouldn't do. And like that's what him and Pat Bryant were doing on day one.
Yep.
Watch Jaden Higgins just play his game. Smooth releases, decisive steps, moving guys out the contact window. He beat one guy down the field vertically, and it was like, yeah, I could, because once he gets opens that stride, he's 6'3" with long legs. He eats grass with that stride. Once he gets past you and he stacks you, he tracks the ball well. He got open multiple times. I was impressed with him today, Keith. And then I'll close it out. His teammate as well. Shout out to Harold Jr. He bounced back as well, had a good day. Jalen Noel had a really good day today as well. Just I think I came in with a third on him, like a mid-third. I think he's moving himself up with how his ability to get open. He had an adjustment on the deep ball. I think it was against Azariah Thomas, and it was a battle between the two. I think Azariah was right in his hip pocket. Azariah looked over the wrong shoulder. Jalen saw it coming, and then he made an outstanding just adjustment catch on it. And then, Keith, I'll close this out. Jake Brenningstew had an outstanding day. And this tight end group in general, man, like he keeps saying it. This is one of the better and more in-depth tight end groups in terms of talent. If your team needs a tight end, Indianapolis Colts, you might want to walk out of this class with at least two of them, or probably two of them, because this class, Jake Brenningstew, 6'5", 240, 45 pounds. He gets open. He gets to his landmarks. He's a big target. In congestion, he's so comfortable catching the football, man. Like, this was a good day, a better day than what we saw yesterday, which should be expected, Keith. It was day one of practice. I think the coaches had to feel everything out. The players did as well.